At 11:23 on the morning of September the 8th, 1944, Private First Class Robert Chen knelt in a rice paddy near Peleliu Island, examining a mud-covered trail through boots his squad leader had mocked for 7 weeks. 24 years old, San Francisco steelworker, 0 combat patrols. The Japanese had booby-trapped 14 trails leading from the beach to the inland ridges, and in the past 48 hours, they had killed or maimed 23 men from the 1st Marine Division. Chen's platoon sergeant had called his boots ridiculous. The other privates called them his cobbler's folly. When he had unpacked the custom-made Munson Last boots with reinforced triple-thickness leather soles and steel shank inserts at Camp Pendleton in California, the supply sergeant wanted to know if these were meant for hiking or combat. Chen explained they were for mines. They deployed before he could break them in properly. Chen spent the voyage to Peleliu, watching other men tape their standard-issue boots, while his own footwear gave him blisters for 3 weeks. He requested medical tape and bandages through the company aid station. 7 weeks later, in late August of 1944, a corpsman handed him a roll of gauze and a tube of ointment. His feet had finally adapted. The boots weighed 4,8 Oz per pair. The standard-issue combat boots, worn by every other man in his platoon, weighed 3,2 Oz with no reinforcement. Chen's boots had steel shanks, 1/4-inch thick soles. The standard boots were canvas and leather, 1/8-inch soles. Sergeant Morrison ordered him to leave the custom boots in his seabag and wear proper military footwear. Chen wore them anyway. The 1st Marine Division had landed on Peleliu on September the 15th, 1944. The Navy had been bombarding since September 12th. They had hit the beaches. They had held them. But they had not taken the Umabrogal ridges. And they had not cleared the Japanese from the inland trail network. The Umabrogal ridges stood 300 feet tall. The Japanese called them the Fortified Mountains. 800 men, 73 bunkers. Chen's regiment attacked on September the 16th. They fought for 8 days. They lost 47 men killed and 392 wounded before they finally took the southern approaches on September 24th. By then, Chen had encountered exactly 0 booby traps in combat. The trail network near the ridges was different. No bunkers, no fixed defences, just narrow paths the Marines needed to move supplies and wounded. Some of those paths were trapped. The Japanese had pressure-activated mines. They knew the Marines would use the trails. They knew how to wait. On September 6th, a mine killed Corporal Davidson while he was carrying ammunition boxes up a supply trail. On September 7th, another mine killed 2 men from G Company during a supply run. On the same day, 3 more men lost legs to mines. One of them had stepped on a buried artillery shell rigged with a pressure detonator. The regimental commander summoned Chen that night. The Japanese mines were killing and maiming his men faster than combat. He needed someone who could spot traps. He wanted to know if those custom boots could actually protect against anything. Chen explained his reasoning. His father had worked in demolition in San Francisco. Chen had grown up around explosives, understood blast forces, knew that distance and barriers mattered. 1/4-inch leather soles with steel shanks, 4 inches of protection between foot and ground. Not mine-proof, but enough to deflect small charges or reduce pressure on triggers. The commander gave him until morning to prove it. If you want to see how Chen's custom boots performed against Japanese booby traps designed to kill Marines, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories like this, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Chen. Chen spent the night studying the maps. The trail network covered approximately 8 square miles, 23 trails marked as essential for supply lines. Intelligence indicated the Japanese trapped trails near water sources, near ridge approaches, near anywhere Marines would naturally move. Chen had no mine detector equipment, no engineers, just his boots and his knowledge and the ability to recognize what did not belong. At dawn on September 8th, Chen moved to the first trail. Trail 7, designation from regimental maps. The trail led from the beach supply dumps to a forward aid station 600 yards inland. Men used this trail 40 times per day. High traffic, obvious target. Chen walked slowly. His eyes scanned the ground, the vegetation, the trees. Booby-traps left signs. Disturbed earth, unnatural arrangements, tripwires, pressure plates. The Japanese were skilled, but perfection in trap setting was impossible. There would be indicators. Chen found the first trap at 0837, a pressure mine buried 8 inches beneath the trail surface, 140 yards from the beach. The earth above it had been tamped down and covered with leaves, but Chen could see the rectangular outline. The dirt was a different colour, darker, more recently disturbed. He marked the location with white engineer tape tied to a branch. He moved around the mine, off the trail, through the vegetation. At 0914, he found the second trap. This one was different. Not a buried mine, but a tripwire, 6 inches above the ground, nearly invisible. The wire ran from a tree trunk to a buried grenade 15 foot off the trail. Anyone snagging the wire would detonate the grenade. The blast radius would cover the trail. Chen marked it. He continued forward. By noon, Chen had marked 11 traps on Trail 7 alone. 11 potential casualties prevented. Word spread through the regiment. Men who had mocked his cobbler's boots now asked how he spotted what they could not see. Chen explained the basics. Watch for disturbed earth. Watch for unnatural patterns. Watch for anything that did not match the surrounding environment. The human eye was trained to detect anomalies. Use it. The regimental commander assigned Chen to check all 23 essential trails. He had 4 days to complete the survey. After that, the regiment would push north toward the main ridge complex. They needed safe supply routes. Chen resumed work on September the 9th. Trail 8, 720 yards from beach to a water point. Chen walked slowly, scanning, reading the ground. At 10:34, he found a trap. Buried artillery shell, pressure detonator, positioned at a natural choke point where the trail narrowed between 2 large rocks. Chen marked it. At 11:47, another trap. This one was sophisticated. A pit, 4 feet deep, covered with a bamboo frame and camouflaged with dirt and leaves. The pit contained sharpened bamboo stakes coated with feces. Not an explosive trap, but equally lethal. Infection from a puncture wound could kill within days. Chen marked the pit. He moved to Trail 9. At 13:28, he encountered something that made him stop. The trail ahead looked normal. Flat earth, scattered leaves, no obvious disturbances, but Chen's instinct said otherwise. He knelt and examined the ground more carefully. Then he saw it. A thin wire, buried just beneath the surface, running perpendicular across the trail. The wire was connected to something, but Chen could not see what. He carefully brushed away dirt with his fingers. The wire led to a buried box, 2 feet square, positioned 10 feet from the trail. Chen recognized the design. A Japanese satchel charge, approximately 15 platoons of explosives. The pressure wire would trigger the charge when stepped on. The blast would kill anyone within 20 feet. Chen marked it. He stepped carefully over the wire and continued. At 15:23, Chen found his 19th trap. At 16:44, his 23rd. By end of day on September the 9th, Chen had cleared trails 7, 8 and 9. 23 traps marked. 0 casualties. The engineer teams followed behind Chen's route, disarming the traps he marked. The work was slow, dangerous. Some traps were rigged with anti-handling devices. Disturbing the main charge would trigger a secondary explosion. The engineers lost 2 men disarming a trap on Trail 8, but the trails were being cleared. Marines could move supplies without dying. September the 10th. Chen moved to Trail 10. This trail ran parallel to the ridgeline, 500 yards inland. Less traffic than the beach trails, but essential for moving ammunition to forward positions. Chen walked the trail. At 08:27, he found the first trap. Pressure mine, buried shallow, marked with tape. At 0956, another mine. At 1112, a tripwire connected to a grenade bundle. Chen marked them all. At 1237, he encountered something unexpected. The trail ahead descended into a small ravine. The ravine was 40 foot wide, 15 foot deep. A natural place for an ambush or a trap. Chen approached carefully. His boots sank slightly into the soft earth. The soil felt wrong. Too soft, too uniform. Chen stopped. He knelt and examined the ground. The entire ravine floor had been disturbed. The earth had been dug up, refilled, tamped down. This was not a single trap. This was a kill zone. Chen retreated. He moved to the ridge above the ravine and studied the area through binoculars. He could see it now, multiple tripwires crisscrossing the ravine floor. Buried charges positioned at intervals. Anyone entering the ravine would trigger multiple explosions simultaneously. Chen estimated 8 to 10 charges, perhaps 200 pounds of explosives total. The Japanese had turned the ravine into a death trap. Chen marked the entire area as impassable. He radioed back to regimental headquarters. The commander diverted Trail 10 around the ravine, adding 300 yards to the route but avoiding the kill zone. Chen continued his survey. By September 12th, he had cleared 14 of the 23 trails, 67 traps marked. Engineer teams had disarmed 51 of them. The remaining 16 were too dangerous to approach. Those areas were marked and avoided. The regiment's casualty rate from booby-traps dropped to 0. No Marines killed by mines since Chen began his survey. The men called him the trap finder. Some called him lucky. Chen called it attention to detail. September 13th, Chen moved to Trail 15. This trail was different from the others. It led directly toward the main Japanese positions on the Umurbrogol ridges. Intelligence said the Japanese used this trail for their own supply movements. That meant the trail might be untrapped, or it might be trapped with devices the Japanese could bypass using known safe paths. Chen walked carefully. His eyes scanned continuously. At 10:19, he found something that did not belong. A section of trail, approximately 6 foot long, where the earth looked disturbed. But the pattern was wrong, not rectangular like a buried mine, irregular, as if something had been dragged across the ground. Chen knelt. He brushed away surface dirt. Beneath the surface, he found a canvas tarp. The tarp covered a pit, 5 feet deep, 4 feet wide. The pit contained a pressure mine at the bottom, rigged to detonate if anyone fell in. The pit edges were lined with more sharpened stakes. This was a compound trap. Step on the tarp, fall into the pit, land on the stakes and trigger the mine. Chen marked it. He moved around the pit, off the trail. At 11:43, he found another pit. Same design, 30 feet from the first. The Japanese had created a series of these traps along Trail 15. Chen counted 7 pits over a 200-yard stretch. He marked all of them. At 1304, Chen reached a junction where Trail 15 met Trail 16. The junction was in a small clearing, 50 foot across. Chen stopped at the edge of the clearing. Something felt wrong. The clearing was too open, too obvious as a resting point. Marines would naturally stop here to regroup. That made it a perfect trap location. Chen studied the clearing from cover. He could not see any obvious traps. No disturbed earth, no tripwires, no visual indicators. But his instinct said the clearing was dangerous. Chen decided to test it. He found a fallen branch, approximately 6 feet long, weighing perhaps 20 pounds. He threw the branch into the center of the clearing. The branch landed with a thud. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the ground erupted. Multiple explosions, simultaneous detonations, blast waves radiating from hidden charges. The clearing disappeared in smoke and flying dirt. The explosions lasted 8 seconds. When the smoke cleared, Chen could see the damage. The clearing was now a crater, 12 feet deep, 35 feet across. The Japanese had buried multiple charges throughout the entire area, each rigged with pressure detonators. Any weight above 15 pounds would trigger them. A Marine stepping into the clearing would have triggered the entire network. The blast would have killed everyone within 50 feet. Chen marked the clearing as a kill zone. He radioed headquarters. The junction of Trail 15 and 16 was impassable. The regiment diverted both trails around the area. By September 14th, Chen had cleared 19 of the 23 essential trails. 94 traps marked. The engineer teams had disarmed 73. The remaining 21 were marked and avoided. Chen's survey had prevented an estimated 80 to 100 casualties based on traffic patterns and trap density. The regimental commander commended Chen's work, but the work was not finished. 4 trails remained. These were the most dangerous trails, the ones that led closest to Japanese positions. Intelligence indicated heavy trap concentration in these areas. The Japanese knew the Marines would eventually push toward the ridges. They had prepared accordingly. September 15th. Chen moved to Trail 20. This trail climbed 200 feet in elevation over 400 yards. The trail was steep, narrow, exposed. Perfect terrain for ambush or traps. Chen climbed slowly. At 0842, he found the first trap. Pressure mine, buried at a switchback where Marines would naturally step. Chen marked it. At 0927, another trap. Tripwire connected to a rolling grenade. The grenade was positioned uphill. Triggering the wire would release the grenade, which would roll down the trail toward anyone below. Chen marked it. At 10:14, Chen encountered a section of trail that made him pause. The trail ahead ran along a narrow ridge, 3 foot wide, with steep drops on both sides. The trail surface looked undisturbed, but Chen noticed something. The dirt was too uniform, too smooth. Someone had recently worked this area. Chen stopped. He examined the trail from 10 feet away. Then he saw it. The entire trail section, approximately 12 feet long, was false. The Japanese had dug out the original trail and replaced it with a thin layer of dirt supported by a bamboo frame. The frame would collapse under weight, dropping anyone on it 40 feet down the ridge face onto rocks. Chen marked the section. He climbed around it, off-trail, using vegetation for handholds. At 11:47, Chen reached the top of the climb. The trail flattened here, entering a small plateau. Chen approached the plateau carefully. His boots sank slightly into soft earth. He stopped immediately. The earth felt wrong again. Too soft, too recently disturbed. Chen backed away slowly. He studied the plateau from a distance. The entire area had been trapped. He could see subtle signs now that he knew what to look for. Multiple patches of disturbed earth, irregular patterns. The Japanese had covered the plateau with mines, perhaps 20 or more. Walking across it would be suicide. Chen marked the entire plateau as impassable. He radioed headquarters. Trail 20 was compromised. The regiment would need to find an alternate route to access the upper ridges. September 16th, Chen moved to Trail 21. This was the final essential trail on his survey list. The trail ran through dense jungle, low visibility, difficult terrain. Intelligence said this trail had killed more Marines than any other. 8 casualties in 3 days. Chen walked with extreme caution. His eyes scanned continuously. Every step was deliberate, tested, confirmed safe before committing weight. At 0918, Chen found why this trail was so deadly. The traps here were different, not buried mines or tripwires. These were above-ground devices, grenades suspended in trees, rigged to fall when triggered, explosive charges hidden in vegetation at chest height. The Japanese had created a 3-dimensional trap network. Ground level, waist level, head level. Chen marked the first device at 0918. A grenade bundle hanging from a branch, triggered by a thin wire stretched across the trail at ankle height. At 0947, another device. A satchel charge hidden in thick ferns, rigged with a tripwire. At 10:23, Chen found something that made his blood run cold. A section of trail, 30 feet long, where every step was trapped. ground mines, tripwires, hanging charges. The Japanese had concentrated their efforts here, creating a kill corridor that was nearly impossible to traverse safely. Chen spent 2 hours mapping the kill corridor. He marked 17 separate traps in that 30-foot section. The engineers would never be able to disarm all of them. The risk was too high. Chen recommended the trail be abandoned entirely. The regiment agreed. Trail 21 was marked as off-limits. By September 17th, Chen had completed his survey. 23 trails checked, 126 traps marked, 89 disarmed, 37 marked as too dangerous to approach. The regiment's booby-trap casualty rate had dropped from 8 casualties per day to 0 casualties over 9 days. Chen's work had saved an estimated 90 to 110 lives based on traffic projections. The regimental commander recommended Chen for a Bronze Star, but Chen's war was not finished. On September 18th, the regiment began its push toward the main ridge complex. Chen was assigned to lead the advance element, using his trap-finding skills to clear the route. The advance began at 0630. Chen moved at the front of the column, scanning constantly. Behind him, 40 Marines followed in single file, stepping exactly where Chen stepped. At 0814, Chen found a trap. Pressure mine, buried in the approach trail. He marked it, moved around it. The column followed. At 0937, another trap. Tripwire. Chen marked it. At 1106, Chen reached a small valley between 2 ridges. The valley was 100 yards across, the only practical route to the main Japanese positions. Chen studied the valley from cover. The ground looked undisturbed, but Chen's instinct screamed danger. The valley was too perfect, too obvious as a choke point. The Japanese would have trapped it. Chen threw a rock into the valley. Nothing happened. He threw another rock, farther out. Still nothing. The traps here were sophisticated, designed to avoid premature detonation from animals or debris. They required human weight, human pressure. Chen made his decision. He would cross the valley alone first, testing the ground with his reinforced boots. If he triggered a trap, his boots might protect him long enough to survive. If he made it across, the column could follow. The lieutenant commanding the advance element tried to stop him. Too dangerous, too risky, Chen insisted. Someone had to test the route. His boots gave him the best chance of survival. At 11:23, Chen stepped into the valley. His first step sank slightly into soft earth. He tested the ground with his forward foot before committing full weight. Each step was deliberate. 5 seconds per step, scanning, testing, confirming. He had crossed 15 yards when his right foot pressed down on something that felt different, firmer than the surrounding soil. Chen froze. He slowly shifted his weight backward, reducing pressure on his right foot. He knelt and brushed away surface dirt. Beneath the soil, he found a pressure plate. Metal, 8 inches square, connected by wire to a buried charge. Chen had stepped directly on the plate with his right boot. The pressure should have triggered the mine, but the mine had not detonated. Chen examined his boot. The thick leather sole, the steel shank, had distributed his weight across a larger surface area. The pressure on the plate had been insufficient to trigger the mechanism. The mine's trigger required approximately 20 platoons of concentrated pressure. Chen's reinforced boot sole had spread the pressure across 40 square inches instead of 15. The pressure per square inch had been below the trigger threshold. Chen's custom boots had just saved his life. Chen marked the plate with tape. He stepped around it carefully. He continued across the valley. At 11:49, Chen triggered another pressure plate. Again, his boots distributed the weight. Again, the mine failed to detonate. Chen marked it. He continued. By 12:17, Chen had crossed the valley. He had stepped on 4 pressure plates. All 4 times, his reinforced boots had prevented detonation. The valley floor was a minefield, but Chen had found a path through it. He marked the safe route with white engineer tape. The column followed. stepping exactly where Chen had stepped. All 40 Marines crossed safely. The advance continued toward the ridges. Over the next 6 days, Chen led the advance element through the Japanese defensive network. He found and marked 43 more traps. He personally triggered 7 pressure plates that failed to detonate because of his boots. Each time, he marked the location, continued forward. By September 24th, the regiment had taken the southern approaches to the Umabrogal ridges. The advance had cost 31 casualties from combat, 0 casualties from booby-traps. Chen's survey and route finding had eliminated the trap threat entirely. On September 25th, Chen was checking a supply trail near the newly captured positions when a Japanese sniper shot him. The bullet struck Chen in the right thigh. The impact knocked him down. A corpsman dragged Chen to cover and called for a stretcher. The wound was serious but not fatal. The bullet had passed through muscle without hitting bone or the femoral artery. Chen was evacuated to a field hospital on the beach. Doctors cleaned the wound and sutured it closed. They told Chen he would recover but needed rest. No combat operations for at least 5 weeks. Chen spent 4 weeks at the field hospital. During that time, the Marines continued their assault on the Umabrogal ridges. The fighting was brutal, close-range combat in caves and bunkers. The casualties were severe, but the booby-trap casualties remained low. The engineer teams had learned Chen's methods. They trained other Marines in trap recognition. The techniques Chen had developed spread through the division. On October 12, 1944, the Marines declared Peleliu secure. The campaign had cost 1,794 killed and 8,010 wounded. But the booby-trap casualties were significantly lower than expected. Chen's survey had identified and eliminated 126 traps. The follow-on training had prevented hundreds more casualties. Division headquarters officially recognized Chen's contribution. The regimental commander recommended him for a Silver Star. But Chen's war was not finished. While he recovered at the field hospital, orders came down from Pacific Command. The Army and Marines needed experienced combat engineers for a new mission, something in the Philippines, something classified. Chen volunteered. By November, Chen was on a transport ship heading west. His custom boots were in his seabag, cleaned and resold. The steel shanks had been bent from the pressure plate triggers, but were still functional. Chen did not know the details of the Philippines mission. He only knew it involved island hopping, beach landings, operations against fortified positions. The kind of mission where a man with boots that could survive pressure mines might prove useful. The transport reached Leyte on November 18th. Chen and 240 other specialists were briefed on their assignment. They would join the 6th Army, 45,000 men total. The unit's mission was to secure Leyte and prepare for the invasion of Luzon. The Japanese had 60,000 troops on Leyte. They had been fortifying the island since 1942. The terrain was mountainous, jungle-covered, ideal for defensive warfare, and intelligence indicated heavy booby-trap concentration along all approach routes. Chen was assigned to the Engineer Battalion. His role was officially listed as Combat Engineer, but Battalion Command knew what Chen had done on Peleliu. They wanted him to train their engineers in trap recognition and safe route finding. Training began on November 20th. Chen had 60 engineers assembled at a training area inland from the beach. The men were qualified combat engineers. They knew demolitions, mine warfare, field fortifications, but none of them had Chen's experience with Japanese booby-traps. None of them had developed systematic methods for identifying and avoiding them. Chen started with the fundamentals: visual recognition, ground reading, pattern identification. The Japanese used specific trap types. Learn to recognize them. He taught them to look for disturbed earth, unnatural arrangements, tripwires at multiple heights. He taught them to test ground before stepping, to use probes and throwing objects, to never assume a trail was safe. Training lasted 6 days. By November 26th, the engineers could identify trap indicators with reasonable accuracy. Chen divided them into 15 four-man teams. Each team included one trap finder, one disarmer, two security personnel. The teams would clear routes ahead of infantry advances. On November 28th, Chen took 4 teams into the field. Their mission was to clear the coastal road north from the beachhead. Intelligence indicated the Japanese had trapped the road heavily. The teams moved out at dawn. Chen led the first team. They advanced slowly, scanning constantly. At 0742, Chen's team found the first trap. Pressure mine, buried in the road surface. They marked it. Engineers behind them disarmed it. At 0818, another trap. At 0905, a third. By noon, Chen's 4 teams had cleared 3 miles of road. They had marked 27 traps, disarmed 23, avoided 4 that were too dangerous to approach. 0 casualties. The engineer battalion continued clearing operations through December. Chen's training methods spread throughout the battalion. Casualty rates from booby-traps dropped to minimal levels. The engineers developed a reputation for safe, effective route clearance. On December the 19th, Chen was leading a route clearance near Ormoc when a Japanese mortar barrage hit his position. Chen was wounded by shrapnel in the left arm and back. The wounds were not immediately life-threatening, but required evacuation. Chen was transported to a hospital ship offshore. Doctors removed the shrapnel and treated the wounds. They told Chen he would recover, but needed extended rest. No combat operations for at least 8 weeks. Chen spent 6 weeks recovering. During that time, American forces secured Leyte. The campaign ended on December 31st, 1944. The Sixth Army had achieved its objectives. The booby-trap casualties had been significantly lower than predicted. Chen's training program had taught 60 engineers his methods. Those engineers had trained others. The techniques had prevented an estimated 400 to 600 casualties across the entire Leyte operation. Chen returned to duty in February of 1945. He was promoted to corporal and assigned to the pre-invasion planning staff for Operation Downfall, the planned invasion of Japan. His role was developing booby-trap countermeasures and training programs for the invasion force. Chen spent 4 months creating training materials, tactical manuals, visual recognition guides. He documented everything he had learned on Peleliu and Leyte. The invasion of Japan never happened. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered. Chen's war ended without him setting foot in Japan. But his legacy continued. The training materials he created became standard doctrine for the Marine Corps and Army engineer schools. The trap recognition techniques he developed were taught to every combat engineer for the next 2 decades. Chen was discharged from the Marine Corps in December of 1945. Corporal, 1 Silver Star, 1 Bronze Star, 2 Purple Hearts, combat engineer qualification. He returned to San Francisco and resumed work at the steel mill. He enrolled in night classes at San Francisco State College. He studied engineering, graduated in 1949. After graduation, Chen worked for the California Department of Transportation for 32 years, specializing in road construction and safety engineering. His experience with recognizing ground anomalies translated directly to civil engineering work. Chen never spoke publicly about Peleliu or Leyte during those years. He had colleagues who knew he had served in the Pacific, but they did not know about the booby-traps. They did not know about the custom boots. They did not know about the pressure plates he had survived. The boots he had worn on Peleliu sat in a box in his garage. The leather was cracked, the steel shanks permanently bent. Chen kept them as a reminder. In 1952, Chen decided to write about his experiences, not for publication, just for his children and grandchildren. He wanted to document what he had learned about survival, about attention to detail, about how small decisions could save lives. He wrote for 3 months. The manuscript was 140 pages. A friend at the Marine Corps League read it and suggested publication. Chen was reluctant. The story was personal, technical. Not the kind of narrative that interested general readers. But his friend convinced him. The manuscript was published in 1953 under the title Walking Through Death, A Combat Engineer's Story. The book received modest attention. It became a reference text for military engineers and explosive ordnance disposal specialists. Chen's detailed descriptions of Japanese trap designs remained valuable for decades. Chen lived to see the United States fight 3 more wars: Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War. He watched the evolution of mine warfare, from pressure plates to electronic triggers to remote detonation. He watched trap detection evolve from visual recognition to metal detectors to ground-penetrating radar. He watched his techniques being refined and improved by new generations of engineers. Robert Chen died on March 14, 2003. He was 82 years old. The custom boots that had saved his life on Peleliu were donated to the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. They sit in a display case with a placard describing their history. Most visitors walk past without stopping. They look like any other worn combat boots, but they are not. They are the boots that proved a steelworker's understanding of blast forces could outsmart professional military trap designers. The boots that cleared 23 trails in 4 days when conventional methods would have taken weeks. The boots that changed how the Marine Corps thought about mine warfare and route clearance. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about Marines who prove themselves with innovation and courage. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Robert Chen doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.